Hello, everybody, and welcome into our last series preview here at the Hockey Writers as we get prepared to start round one of the other series have started. We're setting up the Vegas Golden Knights and Utah Mammoth. Utah getting into the playoffs for the first time as the Utah Mammoth, and of course, Golden Knights have been here before. I've got Chase Beardsley, who covers the Mammoth, and Vivek, who's going to be stepping in to cover the Golden Knights for this preview. Vivek, how's it going?
It's going pretty good. How's it going with you guys?
Doing great. It's always great when the playoffs start, even though the team I cover isn't there. But draft lottery is the one I'm looking forward to. And Chase, how's it going?
It's going well, Matthew. How about you?
Again, I mean, it's fine. It's great for me.
Yeah, I figured.
Watching hockey is,
Yeah.
there's a lot of exciting series coming up, and this one
Yeah.
should be pretty good as well. Utah Mammoth coming into the playoffs for the first time. I'm sure you're happy to cover a team that has been, I guess, rebuilding the last few seasons, and of course haven't made the playoffs as this team. But it's great for them to be here. And let's start with the journey to the playoffs because Utah was pretty much in the mix all season, which is great. And they've been, they make it as a wild card team, but with a good amount of points coming in. So, what was their journey like? Lots of exciting moments actually throughout the season.
Yeah, obviously everyone knows their story coming into this season. Coming from Arizona last year was in their stepping stone. Big additions like Mikhail Sergachev and John Marino adjusting to the team, and this season was the season where it was all supposed to culminate into hopefully a playoff appearance. Everyone said, General Manager Bill Armstrong said, all the players said, this year playoffs are expected, and you saw it from all their prospects coming up. The Tucson Roadrunners were consistently making the playoffs. That was kind of the catalyst of having all those prospects starting to trickle into the Mammoth system. And obviously, all their additions, as I mentioned, like Sergachev and Marino, kind of culminating into what we have right now. Really hot start to the season. Obviously, the Tusky, start. They went a pretty good record when Tusky was first introduced in October. November and December was pretty shaky, and we've heard rumors that they were considering a coaching change, Peter DeBoer for Andre Turney. But then 2026 rolled around, and they went off to a phenomenal start to the year, or the new calendar year. Obviously, what happened was they have a great New York road trip and go on from there. Everyone starts producing. Logan Cooley eventually comes back from a long-term injury. Olympic break gives them a little bit of rest, and then from there, they really continued riding that stretch until finally a couple games ago, clinching their playoff spot, and then obviously locking down the wild card spot, number one in game 71. 81. So just an impressive run for this team. You've seen, like I said, all these rookies that you saw grow in Arizona and last year in Utah, and then also Tucson as well, kind of take another step forward. And a lot of new additions really helped fuel this team to get to the place where they're at.
For sure. I think in the offseason when they were bringing in all these, they were expecting playoffs and some of the trades at the deadline as well. Getting Mackenzie Weegar, that was a big thing. That kind of showing that they're making that transition to a playoff team rather than building. Obviously, they're still building. Lots of young talent still in the pipeline that haven't debuted yet, which is more excitement moving forward. All right, for the Golden Knights, Vivek. They had a little bit of a turbulent thing at the end of the season, changing coaches very surprisingly to John Tortorella. Made the playoffs in the Pacific Division, which is they won the division, but the division's it's so bad.
It's terrible.
It's not a good division. But they're the first seed. They get home ice. They're here. So what was their journey like?
Yeah, like you said, you nailed it there. Towards the end, it was like a bit of up and down season for them. A bit of a roller coaster there. They, at times, they looked slow. From the times that I've watched them, that they looked definitely slow. You can tell that their core group is aging a bit. There's rumors that Mark Stone, after this season, that he'll be placed on long-term in LTIR for the remainder of next season. So I don't know how much of a factor he's going to be going forward. So I assume that contributes to the up and down season that they've had all year. And then even during the trade deadline, they did acquire a Rasmus Anderson, which at the time we thought it was going to be a boost, but when they acquired him, that's when the slump kind of started as well, which is ironic. Because getting somebody as good as Rasmus Anderson, you would assume that would help elevate the team, but it didn't, and so they had to do something. So I guess the surefire next thing to do is to change up the voice in the locker room. Bruce Cassidy, obviously, I'd say typically the thing to say is that he lost the room. So that's essentially what I feel like had happened at that point. They were on the brink of losing or even being out of the playoff spot at the time that they fired him. And then obviously in comes Tortorella. They're 7-0-1 since bringing him in, which is a pretty good record. Which is actually a really good record. So they're running off of that high, of that new coach high. And so they ended the season strong in a very pillow fight division there. Like how everybody says it is. It's terrible. It's a terrible division, but yeah, so here we are now.
Yeah. I mean, and that is, but again, they won the division. They get home ice, even though the Utah Mammoth, that you can maybe say that they're the better team, looking at it. But I mean, and the Mammoth, of course, they're the victim of a crazy good Central Division, which has 3 over 100-point plus teams, which is tough. When you're going to have a tough time getting into that top 3, unless they become a 100-point team, which is definitely possible in the future here. All right, well, jumping into this series, storylines heading in. I mean, the Golden Knights, of course, will have the advantage of being on their home rink. I mean, Utah has a pretty good home record, so they were probably hoping they would get home ice. But Chase, what are you looking at for the Mammoth for storylines heading into this series here?
I think the big storyline here is that for a lot of these guys, it's either their first ever playoff appearance in the NHL or their first time in a long time. Look, core guys that came from Arizona: Clayton Keller, Lawson Krause, Barrett Hayden. These are guys who have only played in the playoff series one time, and that was in a bubble with no fans. We all know that this series is going to have some loud environments, both in Vegas and in Utah. So it's going to be completely different. And that's what Lawson Krause actually told me when I was talking to him about it. He said, he barely remembers the 2020 playoffs, and it was completely different. And especially fast forward, almost 6 years later, like, this is going to be a different beast. So I think, a lot of these guys are going to learn how to play postseason hockey in the, this loud environment. And Andre Tourigny, the head coach, hasn't even coached the NHL playoff game yet. This will be his first one tomorrow. So that is big. I think that's the big storyline. That's where guys like Ian Cole and Mikhail Sergachev, Kevin Stenlund, all these guys who have played in a lot of postseason games are going to really have to kind of carry this team and show them, hey, this is how playoff experience is. This is what playoff hockey is like. You got to keep your calm, and this is how you got to play. Karel Vejmelka, starting goaltender, hasn't played in the NHL playoff game. And then even guys like Nick Schmaltz, who has, once again, took this team, from Arizona to Utah with him. He hasn't played in a playoff game before 2020 because he was injured for that playing round. So I think that's the big storyline. How are the Mammoth going to play in postseason when all these guys have never played in an NHL postseason game? Of course, a lot of the guys, like Sergachev, Stenlund, they have experience. Guys like Dmitry Simashev, this might be his first NHL postseason, but he arguably played in the second best league, the KHL postseason, and won the championship with them. So how are all these players going to adjust to playing in postseason games with a fully engulfed environment around them?
Yeah, that's going to be a big thing because they are going up against the Golden Knights, who have won a cup. They've got lots of great players that are were part of that team. So, I mean, it's not like, there's a lot of experience there. Tortorella's won a cup as a head coach a long time ago, but he has a lot of playoff experience as a coach too. So, yeah, the experience versus the youth for sure. Vivek, what are you looking at for the Golden Knights going into this series?
There's a few things, but the Golden Knights, one thing is their goaltending. That's one thing that I know that they have been struggling with quite a bit, which is ironic because they do have Inhale, of course, and albeit he had a pretty difficult season this year. So I don't assume that he's going to be riding the starter's role. So they did earlier sign Carter Hart. So going into the playoffs, that he will be their starting goaltender. So it's if he can maintain that same um, starters pedigree that he's had the past couple of games. That's one of the storylines I would look at is how well their goaltending does or how well Carter Hart does. There was this one game I can't remember which game it was. I think it was the Edmonton game. It was a few games back, and all of the Vegas players, they all just walked by, or they were giving fist bumps to like all the teammates. They walked by Inhale, and nobody gave Inhale a fist bump. So you look at that and you're like, okay, there's something in the locker room going on there. And if they have to do resort to Aiden Hale, did the team give up on him? So that's one thing that I would look at. Another story is, are they able to maintain their momentum going into the playoffs and going into the series? 7-1 ever since John Tortorella joined. Are they able to kind of maintain that, or if things go wrong, do they resort back to their old ways? One of the things, though, is that the one main advantage I see, though, that Utah has over Vegas is their speed. Like how you mentioned that they're very young, young group of guys there. They do have that speed, and that's one of the things that I was watching the Oilers and Vegas series last year. Is what the Oilers did was that they had a ton of speed, and they just came out, kept on coming at them. So if Utah does that approach, then I don't know if Vegas can maintain that, because albeit they did win the cup a few years ago, but the core group of guys are aging a little bit. Excluding Marner, because Marner's joined. But those are so those are the key things that I would see.
For sure, the goaltending is going to be a big thing. I mean, of course, Chase, you mentioned Vejmelka's no experience in the playoffs, but he's workhorse throughout the whole season, and that might be something to watch too. Is that workload going to come back in a playoff series? And we'll see, because he's not used to that type of pressure. But we'll see how that goes. So goaltending on both sides, we'll have to be watching for sure. All right. Well, players to watch. You mentioned some of the goalies there, but Chase, who are you watching? I mean, there's lots of players on Utah that you could be watching. For me personally, I'm watching Dylan Guenther. I love watching this guy play. He's a 40-goal scorer now. Wish he was a Canuck, because he definitely would have been if they didn't do that trade, that OEL trade. But I'll digress. But who are you watching going into this one?
I'll give you one, I think, obvious pick and one underrated pick. For the obvious pick, I think you kind of have to go Clayton Keller. Again, this is a guy who, in his one postseason appearance, led his team. He was almost a point per game player. And it's going to be interesting, again, how he leads this team as captain when he has no postseason experience in this environment. Obviously, as we've been mentioning, like, he's only made the postseason once, and that was in the bubble. So I think, the season that he just had was excellent. Can he continue that into the postseason? He's riding a 10-game assist streak, so that's big. We'll see if he can kind of continue that, or a point streak into the playoffs. My underrated pick, though, and I actually wrote a piece about him today, Kalia Yamamoto. I think him on the second line has been such a smart addition by Andre Tourny. Last season, he was one of the only guys that is on this Utah team to get playoff experience and to be in the playoffs. He was obviously with the Tucson Roadrunners against the Abbotsford Canucks, and he was a crucial factor in that series against the Canucks. This season, he's stuck around in Utah, and he's shown, he is an everyday NHL player. I think his speed and his ability to catch up with Dylan Guenther and Logan Cooley, which I feel like that line has kind of been missing at points this season, has just excelled. I think especially heading down the stretch in big games, he knows how to show up. That's something he learned down from Tucson. We'll see how he can kind of utilize that in the playoffs.
Yeah, I was going to say Yamamoto's got a ton of speed, and he showed that in Edmonton. And he has revitalized his career back in, going to Utah for sure, and coming up from Tucson, the AHL there too. Vivek, who are you watching? I mean, no, Mitch Marner is going to be a big thing because he's notoriously disappears in the playoffs, at least with the Maple Leafs. But I'm sorry, maybe if I took him away from you. But who are you looking at? You can expand on it for sure.
Well, of course, yeah, Mitch Marner would be one of the main people that I'd be looking at players. Yeah, more so because coming from Toronto, all the limelight that he was on under the scrutiny, and see how he performs under there. Another one I would look at is Rasmus Anderson, is because he's on a contract here. If he does not have a good postseason or good playoffs run here, does he cash in to have that that long term deal? So I would look to him to kind of see what he does. Carter Hart, after obviously everything that he happened to him, I would see how he bounces back. This is we were discussing before about goaltending. This is his first playoffs as well. So we'll see how he reacts to that. Which he does look like he's dialed in the past couple of weeks here, so he's been playing well. So if he can keep that up, we'll see how that kind of happens or how that works. But yeah, those are other than Marner, those are the two players I would look at.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, the goaltending, Carter Hart, he has playoff experience. He's been in the playoffs before. And yeah, it's just, can he anchor a team in the playoffs? Again, we'll see if that happens. All right. We've mentioned a lot of players. You can also look at players here too, but X factors. Chase, what are you looking at? Situations, players going into this one here?
I think we mentioned a couple of big ones. I think Dylan Guenther, obviously the leading goal scorer for the Mammoth. Can he score in the playoffs? His first playoff appearance. Karel Vejmelka, can he win in the playoffs? His first playoff appearance. I think Mikhail Sergachev is my biggest X factor. He's going to be big on the blue line. He's going to be relied on with Mackenzie Weegar to be the top pairing for this Utah team. And Sergachev's more of the offensive side of that duo. So we'll see if he can kind of not just do that, but again, he's a guy who has won 2 Stanley Cups. He's been to 3 Stanley Cup finals with Tampa. Can he kind of use that playoff experience and help the younger guys kind of lean into this playoff experience? And to some extent, Ian Cole, that's something he can do as well as another 2-time Stanley Cup champion. And he even said, this is something that we have to teach the younger guys how to play in the playoffs. And he's seen it firsthand. Jake Gensel obviously was a rookie in 2016-17 season with the Penguins, and Cole was on that team, and he was a big part of that Stanley Cup championship. So it's kind of like mentoring these guys while playing in the postseason and trying to win in the postseason. So that's why I think Sergachev, Ian Cole, I think are going to be some underrated big X factors for Utah.
Yeah, the veteran leadership that they've shown in the past is going to be a definite thing. Like I say, they both have won couple cups each, right? So it's that's a lot of experience to come in for, and like you say, with Cole having experience with young players as well. So that's going to be a big thing. Vivek, what are you looking at Golden Knights for the X factors?
I'm looking at Eichel and Stone to see if they can kind of rekindle their 2023 Cup. Their chemistry, their magic that they had then. So we'll see if they can rekindle that and kind of capture that again, and then kind of feed off of Marner as well to see, Marner might, new city, new playoff atmosphere as well, so to see if they can feed off each other. That's one of the X factors I would say as well. And Shea Theodore as well. Can he perform with a new partner, or like, is he able to perform under pressure, which we've seen in the playoffs the last couple of years. He hasn't really. It seems like he's folded when he's albeit up against McDavid. It's kind of hard, but the past couple of playoffs we've seen him kind of fold, and kind of see his injuries kind of get to him a little bit there too. So see if he can have a bounce back playoff run here. I don't want to resort to the goaltending again because we did that before, but those are the two kind of areas that are players that I would see would be X factors.
Yeah, I mean the goaltending, of course, is going to be an X factor. It always is, and we've mentioned it a few times, so that's going to be a big thing. This will come up probably again. And keys to victory. So Chase, how are the Utah Mammoth going to come out of this series, beating the Pacific Division champions here?
Yeah, it's going to be tough. This is going to be a very, very tough series. And I think everyone kind of expected that, seeing who Utah would match up against. There's going to be a couple things. Obviously, you mentioned can Karel Vejmelka, after such a heavy workload this season, kind of win some games in the playoffs. They did give him some rest. He sat out against the game against Calgary, game 80, I believe. And then they did have him sit after 2 periods in game 82 against the Blues. So they have given him kind of a rest, but, is that going to be enough? Obviously, can these guys adjust to playoff hockey? Can the offense continue clicking? And I think another big one is, can the power play keep being red hot? The power play was one of the worst in the league going into the Olympic break and kind of right after the Olympic break. And right around that time, they started to kind of click. And down the stretch, it's been one of the best power plays in the league ever since that time. So can that continue just elevating themselves into the playoffs? Again, it's a lot of these guys' first playoff experiences and a lot of the coaches' playoff experiences. I don't think that's something to take for granted. So can they kind of adjust to playing a harder style of hockey, playing the same team over and over again in a very loud environment that's going to go against you? That's the big question.
Yeah, the experience factor, we've mentioned it a few times, is going to be a big thing. If they can use that youth in advantage for them, the speed, the inexperience can sometimes be a good thing when you don't know what it's about. So we'll see if that is an advantage for them. Vivek, for you, for the Golden Knights, how are they going to come out of this series?
I would look at it from the experience side on the opposite side. The fact that the Vegas has the experience of winning the cup. They have a coach who has won a cup. So they've been there, kind of done that. And so would they kind of take advantage of an inexperienced team in Utah? So that's one of the keys that I would see, is that they kind of know the atmosphere. They kind of know what it takes to win. So that's one of that's one of the keys for them, is what I would say. The special teams is another one too. They need to have power play penalty kill, especially during the playoffs, is a really crucial thing to have. So that needs to stay red hot, as what it has been the past 8 games under Tortorella. And the other key thing as well is, are they able to stick with Tortorella's system rather than if things don't go right, do they resort back to kind of what they were doing previously and giving up on the coach essentially? So that is a really big key thing, and I want to see kind of if that new coach high, if that wears off at all, or if that's even a thing, or if they're able to kind of keep the momentum going. Kind of thing. But for them, it'd be to stick to Tortorella system.
Yeah, because it's a very small sample size right now of them getting to figure out his system. It's been successful, obviously, with the record they have, but we'll see how long that lasts into the playoffs for sure.
Yeah.
All right, this could be, you can pick, you don't have to pick from the team that you're talking about here, but you could. Who's going to be the best player in this series? And I'll start with you, Vivek, on this one.
The best, I think it's going to be Keller, regardless of even if Vegas or Utah wins. I think that Clayton Keller, from what we've seen this year, he's taken it to a different level. Dylan Gunther as well. I believe that he could be the dark horse to be the MVP as well. So I do really like what Utah's been doing, and I do really like watching them play. They're a young, exciting, fast-paced team. I know I'm on the point of view of Vegas, but I can't help myself sometimes. But those would be the two. Sorry if I stole your players there, but
could definitely be the same for sure. Chase, who are you having as the MVP here?
I mean, Vivek obviously had some great picks. I think Keller would be mine if I was select Utah. I think on the Vegas side, I think it comes down to Eichel. Can he perform? And him and Hart both. I think those are the two biggest players that are going to be on the other side for Vegas. So I'll choose those two, and then Keller on Utah's side.
Good. Yeah. I mean, I'm going Dylan Genther. I mentioned it. I love watching him play. He's one of our exciting players that like I say, I wish he's a Canuck right now, but he's fit in perfectly in Utah. He's one of their identity players too. So I want to see him succeed, and I think he'll be one of their best players again in this series here. All right, let's get our final predictions here. Vivek, who are you going with coming out of this, and in how many games?
You know what? I think Utah's going to win this in 6 games because of their speed. And I don't think that speed is going to be too much for Vegas to handle. The one thing I was surprised with Vegas is that at the trade deadline, they got Nick Dowd, which wasn't. I guess he was a good bottom 6 center, right? And so they didn't really have that splash that they do every year. Year before that, I believe they had like Thomas Hurdle. Before that, they had, there's always a name that they have. I knew that they got Rasmus Anderson earlier in the year, but they were kind of not good with him. And so I thought that they would go out and make another splash to get maybe Nick Waugh or Kadri or somebody.
Yeah.
But they never got that. And so that's why I'm like, I don't know. And I don't know if Tortorella, he's aging out too. And I don't know if his system is. We'll see kind of where it goes. But they have been looking good, though. They'll pass 8 games, albeit I think a few of those games were against the Canucks. So I don't know if that really counts. But we'll see. But that's where I have it as.
All right. Chase, who are you going with? How many games?
So I'm also going to say the series goes 6. But I think it's going to Vegas. I think this is one of those teams that, when it comes to playoff time, really turn it on. I think Vegas and Edmonton are the biggest cases of that. Yeah, they have a fantastic season up to their standards, but once playoffs hit, it's a different beast. I think Utah's going to fight pretty well. Like Vivek said, I think their speed's going to be a great asset and win them 2 games. But I think Tortorella, you mentioned, he's getting older. This is a guy who knows how to get the best out of his players. He took a Columbus team that, it's a couple years ago, but took that Columbus team and beat Tampa and took Boston to 6, even though that Columbus team, probably wasn't the best on paper if you look at Tampa's team. And that had a lot to do with what happened on Tampa's side. But I think that shows that Tortorella just can squeeze everything out of these guys. And, obviously you mentioned the weak schedule coming down the stretch for Vegas. But you look at that team, and Tortorella did a pretty good job coaching, especially in just such a quick turnaround, less than double-digit games. That's impressive. I think, like I said, playoff experience is a huge thing, and Vegas has a lot of it. And I think that's going to be a huge factor in helping them win that series. They're a deep team. I think they know how to turn it on in the playoffs. I'm taking Vegas in 6. I know Utah fans are going to hate me. Sorry, guys.
All right. Well, I'm gonna go, and I love predicting a 7-game series, and I'll say I do it because then when it happens, I'm right. So I'm going 7 games. This is gonna be a 7-game series, and I'm going Utah. I do agree that their speed, I think, is gonna be the little bit that'll get them over that edge, and they've got a lot of that speed and a lot of goal scoring ability too. So I think they might have a little bit of that edge over Vegas, because I don't think Vegas had a really good season. And they can turn it up in the playoffs. That's why I say it's going 7 games, but I think Utah's going to pull it out in the end, but we will see. All right. Well, thanks, guys, for coming on, talking this series that took to the final day to find out this was going to happen. But it should be a fun one. It should be an interesting one. Make sure to check out everything at thehawkers.com. We got coverage throughout the site on all the series, including this one. Make sure you're checking out our Substack newsletter. You got all the updates there and everything else on the site, and all of our other playoff previews. If you haven't checked those out, lots of games already in the books. Great game 1, but enjoy this series. It should be a good one. But until our next preview, which will be round 2, we will see you next time.